Hi all, this is Dana here. In this video, I'm going to be actually teaching you how to do a French knot and a colonial knot. So I've seen in a lot of the Facebook groups and such that I belong to that a lot of people seem to have a really hard time doing these knots. Some of the specialty patterns have them. I know a lot of people will actually replace the knots with beads because they just can't seem to get the knots right. But they're actually pretty simple once you figure them out. There's a few little tricks that I'll show you. But yeah, so I thought I would create a little free pattern, which you can kind of see part of it here. I've done the cross-stitch part here already. It's going to be a little cherry blossom tree. And so this will be available for free, this pattern and the instructions, or the link to this video anyway, will be available on my website. The link to that will be in the description below. And also, if you're new to cross-stitch and you're not even sure really how to follow a cross-stitch pattern or even how to do the X's for the basic cross-stitch, I'll put a link to the beginners playlist below as well. So you just watch the first 3 videos in that series and you'll be literally up and running in no time. It's really not that difficult. And same with the knots. I mean, they're really not that tricky. For some reason, they've gotten this sort of cult of people who hate them, but they do exist and they can have really beautiful effect in some patterns, so I thought I would just explain them to people and show them how simple they are. So in this pattern here, you can see I've got my little zoomed in part of my pattern here that I've made on Max Stitch or Win Stitch, depending on which computer I'm using. So you can see here all the little dots. These are actually the knots, so I'm just going to zoom in a bit. Those are the knots. So each pattern will render them slightly differently on the pattern. Sometimes they'll just be a special symbol or whatnot, but usually you can figure out what the difference is between the knots and the actual cross stitches, which are the solid colors. In some cases they'll be symbols. And so what you can see here, if you've never seen French knots on a pattern before, usually they're on the cross portion, which means they're actually in one of the holes. So one trick is, and I'll show you this in a minute, is you have to make sure when you come up and then go back down again, you don't go into the exact same hole because you're going to pull your knot to the back, which might be where a lot of people are going wrong with their knots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I'm going to do this little section here. So these pink ones I'm actually going to do as colonial knots just to show people the difference between that, and then the white ones I'll do as French knots. So I'll do some of these pink ones here, and I'll show you how to do those, and then I'll stop the video and then finish off the rest of the pink ones, and then I'll start up again and do some of the white ones and show you how to do those in French knots, and then you'll see the difference. From a distance there's almost no difference. Even up close you almost can't tell the difference between them. So that's why I'm teaching both, because some people find that they prefer one over the other. They find one is easier for them than the other, especially if you have any like mobility issues with your hands. You may find one is easier for you to form, or if you're left-handed, yeah, you just might find one easier. So the trick is with anything, including the cross stitch, is just figure out what works best for you. There is no right or wrong. If your pattern says French knots and you prefer colonial knots, do that, and then vice versa. If it says colonial knots but you like French knots, do French knots. It's totally fine. There's no real rules to this. Nobody's going to be judging you unless you're putting it in a county fair, in which case, yes, they will be judging you, but that's kind of the point. Yeah, the point is to really enjoy this and to end up with a beautiful piece at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back the camera up a little bit, and I'll show you. So you can kind of see in the background here, sorry the camera's a bit low, I'm going to be doing this one and this one just at first. Okay, so I'm going to make sure the camera is zoomed in. Perfect. So I've got my thread already threaded. You can see I've done some of the knots already. So this is going to be the colonial knot. So first thing I'm going to show you is actually this needle. This is called a milliner's needle. You can see that the eye of the needle is the same width as the shaft, and that's actually really important for knots. You really don't want to be using your tapestry needle. You can see the eye of the tapestry needle is quite a lot wider than the shaft of the needle, and that's perfect for cross stitch. I mean, that's kind of the point, and the dull tip is the point. You're not supposed to pierce the fabric, but with the milliner's needle it will help you pierce the fabric to anchor your knot, and it will also make sure that the eye of the needle isn't pushing your knot apart as you're stitching. So that might be where some people are having problems, or using the wrong needle. So you can either use these milliner's needles, you can get these in any of those like bulk sets of needle packs from even dollar shops or craft stores, or an embroidery needle. As long as it's not a wider needle like that, then you're going to be fine. But trick is to, I mean, just practice and see which kind of needle you prefer. Most people prefer these kind of needles. So you can see I've got 2 strands going here. So this is on 14 count, by the way. This is a 4-inch hoop. So what you're going to do, it's a bit tricky for me to show this with the video camera in the way. So you're basically going to make a backward C shape like that. You can kind of tighten it up a little bit with your thumb. So you got your C shape. Sorry if it's making it confusing with the 2 layers there. You got your C shape. You're going to put your needle underneath the top edge of it. Alright? So like I said, it's kind of tricky with the, I'm going to prop it up against my tablet so you can see it. Alright, so what you're going to do, so you've got your C shape, so you're going to take this tail here and you're going to wrap it the other direction around the tip of your needle, like that. So you're basically, so you can see how it's almost creating a figure 8 or like an infinity sign. Right, so you've got your C shape, you're going to take the thread up and over the tip of the needle and make like a backwards figure 8. Alright? Then what you're going to do, and this is a part where a lot of people get sort of messed up, is you're going to gently, and really gently, tighten it up. You're not going to pull very hard, just enough to tighten up all the slack threads. And I'm just going to pull it a bit closer so you can see. I'm going to drop that for a second. So you can see it almost creates like a half hitch. For those of you who know other kinds of knots and whatnot, it creates like a little bit of a hitch. So what you're going to do is you're going to keep the tension on this side of your thread. You don't want to pull tight, you just want to keep it enough so that you're not going to get any slack in. And then you're definitely not going to go back down the same hole you just came up because your knot will pop to the back. So what you're going to do is just go like with this 8 of fabric. You can see I'm going in just a little bit above the hole. I'm just going to pierce the fabric slightly. If you're using really fine linen, like even weave, like say 28 count or higher, you can go into the hole above or beside, you know, just be consistent, you know, go the same direction each time so your knots lie even. Or you can just try to pierce the actual linen thread a little bit, or if you're stitching over top of an area that's already been stitched with cross stitch, you can carefully pierce a little bit of the cross stitch just to catch it. Basically, you're wanting to make sure that your needle is coming out of the hole and going back into your fabric in a different spot. It can be very close together, but they have to be a different spot, otherwise your knot will pop through to the back. So that's the same with the French knot and with the Colonial knot. Alright, so you pierce your fabric, pull it through, and again you're just going to be really gentle. Sorry if this keeps going in and out of focus. I'm just going to focus that a little bit so you can see. So what you're going to do is just really gently pull it through, and keep your thumb on that as long as you can. And just really, really gently pull through. You don't want to pull hard because if you didn't, say if your needle went through really, really close to your other one and just barely caught and you pull really hard, you could snap the little connecting thread between the two, and so then your knot could fall through to the back, or it just ends up not being formed very nicely. So there you go. There's one little Colonial knot right there. Alright, so I'm going to do another one. Sorry if this keeps going out of focus, I'll focus it again in a second. Alright, so I'm going to pull up, pull it out. Alright, focus. So again, you're going to make your backward C. C for Colonial. Alright, you've made your backward C. Alright, I'm going to loosely, sorry, it's really hard to do with the camera in the way. Wrap it around. So you've made your little figure 8. And gently pull. Doesn't matter if it twists up a little bit on itself, that's fine. It's all going to lie the same anyway. And then again, you're going to go in very close to where you came out, but not in the same place. For me, I'm going just slightly above the hole. That so you can see it's all nice and tight, ready to go. So like I said, it's not tight, it's just taut enough that the tension is on it and it's not going to buckle when you're pulling it through. So carefully pull this through. Sometimes because you are using two strands, one strand will pull through faster than another one if you've got your needle a little bit not in the center. So just be careful of that and just watch it as it's going through and make sure your threads are pulling through evenly. And focus. Sorry, it's not really too close. There we go. Focus. Alright, I'm going to do one or two more just so you get the hang of it. Do this one up here. Just put that one there. Alright, so again, make your backward C. So however you want to form this, so this is why it's good to experiment when you're doing this, because you're going to find your own way of doing this. Like some people might find it easier to put their finger, especially if you've got this on a frame that you don't have to hold with your hands as well, you can put your finger down there and wrap your floss around it to make that C shape, or however you find it easier, you can just wrap it around your needle. So there you go, you pick up underneath your reverse C. Tighten that up just a little bit, drop it around, so that's your reverse figure 8 again, pull it tighter. If it happens to slide off the end of the needle before you've finished doing the knot, that's fine, you can just pull the needle out and then you just pull it apart, it won't have actually knotted, and then anchor it just above where you came out, push it through, and then gently pull your thread. I think probably where a lot of people get confused with this or have issues is they're trying to put their needle back in the same hole, which is obviously going to create problems, and then they're maybe not holding it tense enough or just tight enough just that the threads aren't knotting as they're curling around each other trying to form the knot. So that's it, that's the colonial knot. I'm going to keep working across and do the rest of this little pattern with the pink ones, with the colonial knots. Then I'm going to come back and I will show you how to do a French knot. Talk to you in a moment. Okay, I'm back. So as you can see, I've finished off the colonial knots. So there you go, there's all the little, oops, sorry, not focusing properly. There you go, all the little knots everywhere. The good thing is with patterns like this, where the knots are just kind of scattered around, like if you miscount and put a knot in the wrong place, it's fine, nobody's gonna know, don't even worry about it, it's not worth ripping things apart for, it's totally fine. And so what I'm started doing here is, you can see I've started doing the French knots, and you can see this little one here, the loop was a little bit loose when I pulled it tight, so you get a little bit more of the curl of the thread showing, but that's fine. I mean, it's anchored, it's actually not going anywhere. But I actually really like French knots, because as you can see more of the actual loop of the thread, so I think it just looks really nice. But I mean, the colonial knots are fine too. So like I said, it totally depends on what is easier for you to do. So what I'm going to do is show you how to do a French knot. So like I said, with the colonial knot, this is easier to do if you either have a hands-free hoop or frame or something like that, or if you can put your hoop on the table to do this. It just makes holding the tension a little bit easier. I'm going to lay it up against my pattern here, my tablet. So what I'm going to do is pull the thread out. And with a French knot, and the colonial knot as well, if you use more strands of floss, you're obviously going to get a bigger knot, and less strands of floss, you're going to get smaller knots. So what I'm going to do is, let's put that down there for a second. So with a French knot, instead of sort of making a C and then going round and then round again, you're actually just winding your thread around your needle. So I'm going to do 1, 2, and then same thing, you're going to put the tip of your needle just above where you came out. And with this one, same with the colonial knot, you can do this as well, is you can actually push, keeping tension on your thread here, you can push your knot right up against the fabric, so there's less chance of it getting too loose. So I'm just going to focus that a little bit. There we go. So yeah, you keep your tension here, making sure that when you're pulling that these strands don't get knotted up or tangled up or anything like that. And then just keeping a bit of tension on that on here. Just pull very gently. Ta-da! French knot. Alright, where's my next one going? He's going around here. Yes, this pattern that's going to be on my site that's for free, you can follow it exactly if you like for the placement of the French knots, or you can just, or the knots in general, or you can just decide yourself where you want the knots. You can put as many or as few in as you like. It's your project. Okay, so again, 1 wrap, 2, so that's it. Just 2 wraps around. It actually ends up kind of being 2.5 by the time you twist the point of the needle around. So like I said, with the Colonial knot, I tend to go just above where I came out. Putting that in there, like that. So again, I'm holding it tense. I'm just going to zoom in a second as soon as I get this to go through. There you go. To keep tension on your opposite hand, just to keep that. I'm just going to zoom that in a little bit. Sorry, this camera isn't so great for really close-up stuff. There we go. So you keep, like I said with the Colonial knot, you keep your tension on your thread as long as you can. Bam! Little French knot. And one thing to know too with doing these kind of knots is that you will actually end up I'll say running out of thread sooner than you might use with cross stitch, because you do have to have a fair amount of slack to be able to do the wrapping and holding the tension and all that kind of stuff. So you will find yourself having to end your threads sooner than you might otherwise think you do. Oops, sorry, it's a little bit wrapped up here. Okay, so I'm gonna go 1, 2, and then again put it just above, put the point of the needle in, and then you can, so as I'm pushing this down with my fingernail, I'm actually pulling with this hand here just to keep it a little bit tense. Ta-da! So there you go, there's more French knots. So I'm going to keep doing the rest of this, and then in a few moments you'll see a picture of the finished project. And if you have any questions about this, if I didn't explain something well, please let me know in the comments below and I will help you out. Yeah, like I said, there's no real reason to be scared of French knots. Like, I know a lot of people are really kind of freaked out by them, and like the amount of people I've seen in the Facebook groups completely losing their mind about French knots and like not even buying certain patterns because they happen to have knots in them. You know, like that, to me that's just a shame, because I mean the reason that they exist is because they're really, really pretty and they can add a really beautiful effect, especially to flowers, like the stamens of flowers and things like that. Really, really pretty. So yeah, that's it for now. I will talk to you later. Stay tuned for the final shot of the finished piece once I've finished it. And yeah, talk to you later. Bye for now.